It had been a long, uneventful Thursday. The kind that hung heavy in the air, made worse by the silence that echoed off the walls. Hannah sat on the edge of the couch, her legs tucked under her, staring at the muted television screen while the hum of the fridge filled the background. The clock ticked to 9:38 p.m., and still no word from Greg. He had said he'd be working late again, something about an out-of-town client dinner that might run long. It was the third night this week. She wanted to believe him. She really did. But believing felt harder these days. She got up, walked to the kitchen, and poured herself a glass of red wine, not because she wanted it, but because it filled the silence. She moved slowly, as if rushing would admit to herself how bored, how starved for attention she really was. Their marriage hadn't always been like this. She still remembered their early days, spontaneous road trips, surprise breakfasts in bed, late-night dancing in the living room just because a good song came on. Those memories were still there, but lately, they felt like postcards from a trip she wasn't sure she actually took. Tonight, she wore an oversized hoodie and a pair of leggings. She wasn't expecting anyone. She didn't need to impress anyone. Greg certainly didn't seem to notice anymore. She picked up her phone and scrolled mindlessly. Social media, texts, weather, nothing. No messages from Greg. She sighed and set it down. And then, a knock at the door. Her body stiffened. It was late. Who could it be? She walked slowly to the front window and peeked through the curtain. A tall figure stood just beyond the porch light. He shifted his weight, wiped rain from his forehead, then knocked again, twice, firmly, like he knew her. She cracked the door slightly. "Ryan," she said, blinking in surprise. "Hannah," he smiled, stepping back slightly. "Sorry to show up unannounced." "Is Greg home?" "No, he's not. He's working late. Again." "Of course," Ryan said, nodding like that wasn't a surprise. "My car broke down just a couple blocks away. Thought I'd try here before calling a tow. Hope that's not weird." She hesitated. Ryan was Greg's old college friend. They hadn't seen each other much in recent years, just a few barbecues and weddings. But she remembered his laugh, how he used to make everyone around him feel at ease. She opened the door a little wider. "You're soaked. Come in for a few minutes while you call the tow truck. I'll grab you a towel." "Thanks," he said, stepping in, his shoes squeaking slightly on the hardwood. She handed him a towel from the hallway closet. He rubbed it over his head and then draped it around his neck, still dripping slightly. "Sorry again," he said. "Didn't expect the rain. Or the car to just give up on me like that." "No worries. It's been a quiet night, honestly," she said, returning to the kitchen. "Wine?" He chuckled. "Why not?" They sat on opposite ends of the couch, glasses in hand, awkward at first. But soon, the small talk flowed easier. "So, how's married life treating you too?" he asked casually, sipping. She hesitated. "It's fine. You know how life gets." He tilted his head, giving her a look she wasn't expecting. "You don't sound sure." She shrugged, not wanting to dive into it. "Greg's busy. Work keeps him out late. It's been like that for a while." Ryan nodded thoughtfully. "You deserve more than just fine, Hannah. You always struck me as someone who wanted life to feel full." She didn't respond, just stared at the rim of her glass. "You remember that summer we all rented that cabin on the lake?" he asked. She looked up, smiling slightly. "Barely. That was, 10 years ago?" "You made the best grilled cheese I ever had," he said, laughing. "Still remember it?" She laughed, genuinely this time. "That's such a random memory." "It was a good weekend," he said, his eyes settling on hers for a beat too long. Her laughter faded. The room got quieter again. "I should fix that kitchen drawer," he said, standing suddenly. "You know, the one that sticks? I noticed it earlier." She watched him walk to the kitchen. "You don't have to." But he was already there, pulling the drawer out, fiddling with it confidently. When she joined him, she placed her glass down beside his. As he pushed the drawer back in, it slid effortlessly. "Good as new," he said, brushing his hands together. She turned to thank him, but in the close distance, their hands met on the counter. She didn't pull away. Neither did he. Her hand stayed beneath his for a second too long. Long enough for her to notice the warmth, the pause in his breathing, and the way neither of them said anything. Then she slowly stepped back, breaking the moment. "Thank you for fixing the drawer," she said softly, voice low and unsure. "Anytime," Ryan said, smiling faintly, as though pretending nothing had just passed between them. But the tension was unmistakable now. It hovered in the air, unspoken, yet heavy. She picked up her wine glass again and turned toward the living room. "Want to sit for a bit before you call the tow?" He nodded and followed. The rain outside had picked up, tapping steadily on the windows like a metronome counting down something inevitable. The room was dimly lit, just a single lamp glowing in the corner and the flicker of the paused TV screen. Ryan removed his damp jacket and set it neatly over the back of the chair. He was wearing a white undershirt, fitted, casual. Hannah noticed the slight tension in his arms, the veins on his forearm, the way he moved with quiet confidence. She hated herself for noticing. They sat again, slightly closer than before. Their bodies angled inward now, feet loosely crossing at the middle of the couch. He took a slow sip of wine, his eyes resting on hers in a way that made her feel both seen and vulnerable. "You okay?" he asked. She didn't answer right away. "I'm not sure anymore," she finally admitted. "Some days I feel like I'm living someone else's life. Like I'm just going through motions in a version of myself I never asked for." Ryan nodded slowly, like he'd lived that too. "You know," he said, "after my divorce, I realized that silence in a house is different when it's filled with someone you're not connected to anymore. It's louder somehow." She looked down. That hit too close to home. "Greg used to be so attentive," she said. "Now it's like I'm part of the furniture. Here, but not really seen." There it was. The truth laid bare on the table between them, as fragile as the half-full wine glasses. Ryan leaned back, exhaling deeply. "You deserve more than that, Hannah. You've always radiated this light. It's not right for that to be dimmed." She turned to face him fully, studying the curve of his jaw, the way his eyes didn't flinch from hers. He wasn't like Greg. He wasn't guarded. He wasn't distant. "You know," she said softly, "when you used to come around, I always thought you were the charming one of the group. You made everyone feel like they mattered. You still do." A flicker of surprise passed across his face, followed by something deeper. He leaned in a little, not too close, but enough for her to feel the air shift between them. "I always noticed you, too," he said. "But you were Greg's. Off-limits. Untouchable." Hannah's breath caught in her chest. The words were dangerous. They danced on a line that was already cracking beneath them. The rain thudded harder against the windows. A flash of lightning illuminated the room for a second. Ryan stood up suddenly. "Maybe I should go," he said, though his voice lacked conviction. She rose with him. "Ryan." He looked at her. "This is a line, Hannah. And if we cross it—" "I know," she whispered. But neither of them moved away. A long pause stretched out between them, thick with temptation, guilt, and the ache of being needed. Ryan reached out slowly, brushing a strand of hair from her face. This time, she didn't pull back. She closed her eyes instead, leaning slightly into the touch. Her voice cracked when she said, "I don't know what I'm doing." "You're not alone in that," he said gently. He stepped closer. Their bodies nearly touched. "We don't have to do anything," he said. "I can just sit here. With you. That's enough." But it wasn't enough. Not for her. Not tonight. When he started to lean in, slowly, deliberately, she didn't stop him. Their lips brushed, light, hesitant, uncertain. Then again. Firmer. More sure. Her heart pounded against her ribs as she tasted a kind of warmth she hadn't known in years. She pulled back for a breath, eyes wide, searching his face for regret or hesitation. But all she saw was clarity. "We shouldn't," she whispered. "But we already did," he murmured. Silence. No justification. No apology. She didn't know what would happen next. But she also knew she wasn't ready to stop. She didn't remember who leaned in first, or if it even mattered. What she remembered was the feeling, his hands trembling slightly against her waist, the warmth of his breath mixing with hers, and the way the world seemed to hush in that moment. There were no loud declarations. No dramatic pauses. Just a quiet surrender between two people who had gone too long feeling like shadows in their own lives. They kissed again, slow at first, uncertain. Then deeper, hungrier. Her fingers found the hem of his shirt without thought, and he responded like he'd been waiting for this longer than he wanted to admit. Time blurred. Rain still tapped on the windows, but the sound faded beneath the thundering of her heart. She knew the weight of what she was doing.
She wasn't naive. She was someone's wife.
Greg's wife. The man who trusted her, who still wore his ring every day. But tonight, in the dim light of their living room, with the scent of red wine and rain hanging in the air, she wasn't thinking about promises.
She was thinking about how long it had been since someone touched her like she mattered.
When they moved to the bedroom, it wasn't rushed. It was almost reverent, like they both needed to feel something real, something that reminded them they weren't invisible. The night unfolded not with recklessness, but with intention. They whispered each other's names like secrets, fragile and fleeting. Every moment was laced with tension, guilt, and something dangerously close to comfort. When it was over, they lay in silence. Not the kind that demanded explanation, but the kind that settled between two people who knew the world outside that room would soon come crashing back in. She turned on her side, studying Ryan's face in the faint light spilling from the hallway. His eyes were open, fixed on the ceiling. He looked thoughtful, almost regretful.
He broke the silence first.
"I shouldn't have come here."
She didn't argue.
"Instead," she said softly, "but you did."
He nodded. "And now I don't know what this means."
"Neither do I." They both stared at the ceiling for a while, the weight of reality creeping back into the room. Eventually, Ryan sat up and swung his legs over the side of the bed. "I should go. Before Greg gets home. He won't be home till morning." "I still should." He stood, pulling his shirt back over his shoulders. She sat up slowly, wrapping the sheet around her, suddenly aware of the chill in the air, and in her chest.
He didn't say goodbye.
He just looked at her one last time, then walked out.
She heard the soft click of the front door closing.
And then, silence. She sat on the edge of the bed for a long time, staring at nothing.
She didn't cry.
She didn't scream. She just felt numb. Downstairs, she picked up the 2 empty wine glasses, wiped down the kitchen counter, and folded the towel Ryan had used. The drawer he fixed slid in perfectly, without a sound.
She stared at it. Something so small. So meaningless.
Yet now it was a marker of everything that had changed. Her phone buzzed on the table.
A message from Greg. Heading home early. Meeting got cancelled. Love you.
She swallowed hard, heart skipping. She checked the time, just past 6 a.m.
The sky was lightening outside.
She grabbed a fresh shirt and quickly washed her face, brushing her fingers through her hair to look as composed as possible. She looked in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. The front door opened a few minutes later. Greg stepped in, looking tired but smiling.
"Hey, babe. Sorry I didn't call sooner. It was a long night." She forced a small smile.
"It's okay." He kissed her cheek, then headed upstairs to change. Alone again, she sat on the couch, clutching her coffee like it could steady the storm inside her. Her eyes wandered to the table where Ryan's jacket had been, now gone. And then to the drawer, the only silent witness to what had happened while the world slept. She knew things would never be the same.
Maybe Greg would never find out.
Maybe this moment would disappear like a smudge wiped clean.
But she'd always know.
And that knowledge, silent and constant, would follow her in every drawer she opened, in every silence that lingered too long, in every question Greg never thought to ask. She looked out the window as the sun began to rise, her reflection ghosted against the glass. Some choices are loud, made in the heat of anger or passion. But others whisper. And those are the ones that stay.